Boob tube, I'm back. I've been up to more stuff lately in my daytimes before work, and we got enough to do another little update here. So, first things first, a little while back, we rented a movie on demand or whatever the hell you do, and that movie in question is known as Free Guy. Ryan Reynolds stars in this movie, and he plays a character named Guy. He wakes up every morning, goes about his same routine, gets the same coffee at the same place, goes to the same bank that he works at every day, talks to his same buddy security guard named Buddy, and it very much reminded me of the Lego movie when Emmett would get up and do his fucking thing, right? Like, everything is awesome and go to work at the construction site. It was kind of like that. And as Guy goes throughout his day, we learn that there's something weird about this, right? There's something very strange about Guy in Free City, which is where he lives. Soon enough, we meet, or we find out that Guy is actually a non-playable character inside of this massive online multiplayer video game. And as he goes about his day one day, he sees this character walk by named Molotov Girl, and she's singing a Mariah Carey song, and it sparks something in Guy, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna follow her. And it deviates him from his programming, and eventually he finds a pair of sunglasses which all the playable characters in the game have, and he steals them and puts them on, and all of a sudden the whole game, like the actual game, is revealed to him. And he starts to develop and evolve and wants more out of life inside this video game. In the real world, we learn that a guy named Keys is working for a company named Tsunami, which is run by a total dick named Antoine, and he is one of the main programmers on this game, which is hugely popular. And Keys' buddy, who developed the coding for this game, her name is Millie, does not work for the company and is pissed because Antoine kind of stole their code and used it to make millions off this game that, by and large, should be largely accredited to them and the coding they did. And the coding they did is, part of it is what has evolved this Guy character to gain his own intelligence and evolve and not just be a non-playable character, just going through the motions sort of thing. So what ensues is a nationwide phenomena where this non-playable character named Guy, people think at first he's a hacker and whatnot, but and so he becomes known as Blue Shirt Guy as he sets out in the game and does all these crazy tasks and becomes this really personable character that everybody is amazed by. And in the end, it's kind of a mirror, like there's stuff going on inside the game with Guy and outside the game between Keys, Millie, and Antoine as they kind of sort things out. And Keys and Millie try to get what's their due from Antoine while he tries to shut down the servers and ruin the game, which would kill Guy. So Guy's trying to just survive and help Millie and Keys, keep the game active and stuff. So it's this whole twisted storyline with all that's going on at the end of the movie, and it's just amazing. It's so funny. Anything with Ryan Reynolds, right? Like, we know he's responsible for the birth of the Deadpool movies, and he's so funny in them, and anything he does now is usually a pretty big hit, right? So and this being based on a video game is just like right up my alley, and it was so much fun and so funny and so amazing. Next up, a couple of books. First up, Stephen King's Mr. Mercedes. This was released in 2014, and it features an ex-police officer who has just retired named Bill Hodges. A year before, in some unnamed town in the States, a guy had stolen somebody's Mercedes and run down a bunch of people that were waiting outside of a convention center or whatever to go to a job fair. He killed 16 people and injured a bunch in the process. A year later, the case is still unsolved. Bill Hodges is retired, but one day he gets a letter in the mail from Mr. Mercedes, who's kind of taunting him and whatnot. And he decides he'd been having like suicidal thoughts. He'd just been like lounging about, eating junk food, watching TV all day. He had no purpose in life anymore. This suddenly gives him purpose, and he starts reinvestigating the case based on this letter. And along the way, he goes back and revisits. He doesn't let his old partner Pete Huntley in on it. He picks his brain for some stuff, but doesn't really let on what he's doing. A kid in the neighborhood that cuts Bill's lawn and stuff named Jerome. He's younger. He knows computers and stuff. So he gets Jerome in on the action. And eventually he meets, there's a lady named Olivia Trelawney, who is the person who Mr. Mercedes stole the Mercedes from. She eventually ended up committing suicide with the guilt of everything and that happened and whatnot. And so Bill eventually meets her sister, who has taken over her estate. Her name is Janie. She wants the killer caught, obviously, and task Bill with helping him in the investigation as well. And they also develop somewhat of a relationship. Now, while all this is unfolding and going on, we actually know who the killer is. We meet him. We find out about his home life, his twisted relationship with his mother, the fact that he works 2 jobs. One of them being an ice cream man driving around in the truck, so he's able to observe Bill and his neighborhood and kind of monitor his goings-ons and whatnot. And the other thing he does is he works for an electronics store, and he does like house calls to fix people's computers and stuff. So he's got some computer knowledge, and he's able to access certain people's machines on call-outs, which also helps him in his twisted kind of schemes and whatnot, right? So basically, it's just Bill taking matters into his own hands with his new allies and trying to bring down Mr. Mercedes, which has always been a personal grudge for him, and without the help of the police department. But it all culminates when Mr. Mercedes is planning on going out with a big bang, let's just say, and he's going to potentially take a lot of people with him. And it gets to the point where Bill and his allies aren't sure if they can handle it anymore and might have to call in the cops and whatnot. But, of course, events spiral out of control, and it doesn't really go the way anybody had planned on either side of the thing. So, and kind of reaches a thrilling conclusion, as Stephen King's novels oftentimes do, right? Next up, the second book is another Marvel one, those new series of books they have, and this one is based in the Asgardian realm of the Marvel Universe, and it is called The Sword of Surtur. This story starts off in Asgard with Odin throwing a feast for Thor because he's taken on the frost giant King Ymir and laid him low and stolen his beard of ice and brought it back to Asgard. And so they're blah 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 having a feast. Thor's brother Tyr, the god of war, thinks Thor's actions are reckless. He's only out to personify his own image and be a hero and whatnot, so he's kind of bitter. And Loki kind of stirs him into making a bit of a ruckus at this feast about Thor's kind of selfishness and putting the realm in danger by going on these little crusades of his. And he storms out of the feast. And eventually Tyr's friend Bjorn catches up to him, and they talk over things and Thor's situation and Tyr's situation. Tyr has lost his arm because he was the one who sacrificed it to keep the great wolf Fenris captive until Ragnarok. So he, like, nobody recognizes that anymore. Like, where we all do things to keep the realm safe, but Thor gets all these accolades for his goofy quests, right? So then this woman named Lorelei appears, the sister of, I can't remember her name, but they have these feminine wiles, right, where they're able to influence men and prey on their kind of emotions and stuff. And she kind of sweet talks the two into maybe going after the fire giant king, Surtur. And if they could steal his sword, Twilight, which is prophesied to lay Odin low during Ragnarok, they can avert that whole catastrophe. So they travel to the realm of Muspelheim, and the three of them on a journey to not necessarily engage Surtur if they can avoid it, but just get in, steal the sword, get out. And if they have the sword in their possession and can lock it away in Asgard, the prophecy can't come true, right? Of course, things go wrong right from the start. And in the end, Tyr and Bjorn, who have come at odds against each other on the quest because Lorelei's playing them off each other and using her enchantments. In the end, they find out that she was just using them both the entire time for her own purposes to get Twilight. And so they have to kind of reconcile and go after Lorelei in the end with the help of this dwarf, who Tyr brings back from Muspelheim into Asgard, not realizing at the time that it was actually Surtur's daughter, Cinder, in disguise, who they had engaged during their treks through Muspelheim a couple times. And so now they've actually brought her through to Asgard, and thus threatening the realm, and she's set to bring her father through to finally let that prophecy of killing Odin ring true. So it's this big fight on the Rainbow Bridge. Heimdall's involved, where they have to kind of repel Surtur and his forces and avert disaster. And in the end, it's kind of cool because it's like when Tyr is before Odin, kind of atoning for the actions that led to the realm almost being, destroyed by the fire giants. We get a glimpse that Odin had actually set the whole thing up. The feast for Thor that would have aroused Tyr's ire, then the mission to Muspelheim. Thor actually, because the two brothers had been growing apart and at odds with each other with their different ways of approaching life and whatnot. And so Odin actually set this whole thing up to bring them back together, because when Odin was giving Tyr his kind of punishment for his actions, Thor came to his aid, and the two of them kind of got chummy again and whatnot. So it was all kind of a scheme in the end for Odin to bring his two sons together. So pretty cool story. Next up, don't have a case for this one, but I recently downloaded on my Nintendo Switch a game called Blaster Master Zero. The original Blaster Master was an NES game released in the late 80s by Sunsoft, and it's probably my favorite standalone game of all time for the NES. And when I say standalone, I have to put it up beside the Mega Man series as a franchise, because I also love that. That's kind of, Blaster Master is so good. Now, this Blaster Master Zero is in 8-bit style, just like the original was, and it's kind of a reboot of the original Blaster Master, but it's got some big differences. So basically, Earth had gone through an ice age, things had been wiped out, they'd gone through wars, humanity had to go underground and live underground, and the stuff that they learned from living underground, they eventually brought back to the surface when it was safe to return, and they restored the Earth and got things back to normal. But in the meantime, a comet crashed into Earth. They don't know what the hell it was, and no bad came of it. So hundreds of years later, a few hundred years later, a kid named Jason Frudnick, or a young man named Jason Frudnick, sees this frog creature outside, and who he names Fred. And it eventually escapes underground, and Jason's like, oh no! He goes after it, falls down this chasm. There's this weird-looking tank, armored vehicle down there, called the Sophia 2 or something like that, or 3. And he gets in it and is like, what is this thing? And so he takes off in it after Fred, and lo and behold, the middle of the Earth is full of mutants. So he has to battle these mutants. Along the way, he finds this girl named Eve, who seems to have this weird connection to the Sophia vehicle. Finds out eventually she's a robot, and she had actually come to Earth to fight these mutants who had wiped out her home planet, or endangered it, or whatever happened. So she was there to deal with these mutants. So the two of them team up, still going after Fred, but in the meantime, taking on all the mutants, and eventually taking on the mutant boss, and kind of eliminating this threat that the Earth didn't even realize it was under. So super fun game. Like I said, the original Blaster Master is my favorite NES game. This one, it was just as fun. It's cool because you have the Sophia, and you go around all these different environments. You have these doors that will lead you to the next kind of area, and they all have a theme. Like, some of them are ice, some of them are fire, some of them are techno, whatever, right? And as you go along, you can get different abilities for the Sophia. Not only different weapons and sub-weapons, but the ability to hover, to climb on walls, that sort of thing. And what's really cool is that, although you're in the tank most of the time, you come to these little caves or doorways every so often. You can pop Jason out of Sophia and go in to do a mission on foot, which is usually where you face off against the bosses of each realm. And there's usually more than one. There's the big boss that gets you through it, but there's little bosses along the way that'll leave upgrades for either Sophia or for Jason, who can increase his weapons and shit like that and stuff too. So really cool game. Played through it in a real hurry because I just couldn't stay away from it. And there may be more in this series that I might have downloaded for later as well. So that's coming. Last up, PS2 game that I quit playing, Socom 2, U.S. Navy SEALs. It's a decent game. I like this game, but I started playing it actually when we were in our old house. So that is over, like, I started playing this game 12, 13 years ago. And then we moved and I kind of got put on a shelf and I never got back to it. And I tried picking it up recently and playing through it. And I did all right, but it's one of those games, like you're a team of 4 U.S. Navy SEALs and this threat from the Saseri Syndicate and weapons running comes up, and so you play through this first mission. You got to foil them and destroy their weapons caches or whatever the hell it is. And then you go from, from region to region to, disrupt these different threats, whether it's terrorists, gun runners, whatever. And each mission is different. It's a very tactical game. You're not necessarily just running and gunning, which is my preferred style. There's a lot of skulking around, hiding, waiting for the right time to strike. And that's fine. I don't mind that. But the problem with this game is that, with all of the skulking around and stuff, the missions can go on for a long time. They can take a while to complete. So that right there is a negative for me. I like more fast-paced stuff. Like I said, I like running and gunning. I like more fast-paced, jumping, dancing around, bullets all over the screen all the time. Like, picture Metal Slug. Like, that's right in my brain case, right? But this one, with all the skulking around and the slow pace, I don't like that. That right there is a downside to me, but I can deal with it. But if you're playing a mission and you get through all the way almost to the end and then you die, there's no save points along the way. You're restarting that mission from the very fucking start, and you got to go through all the slow fucking paces again. You know exactly what you got to do, but you got to take the time to do it. And that right there just took it out of me. I couldn't do it anymore. I would have had a really different opinion on this game if during the missions there were different checkpoints where if you die later on, okay, you don't have to do that first section again. You're in the middle of the second section. You start from here and move on, right? And then third, right? But no, it's just the whole thing again. It was like, I did it a bunch of times and I'm like, you know what? I'm out. I can't do it anymore. This is too slow paced for me. This is going to take way too long for me to complete this game. And although I like the game, I don't love it. So it's not worth it. So some people are suited to this style of game. I'm not. I'm not saying it's a bad game. It's just not for me. It's not my style. So, but if you like that kind of stuff, you'd probably really like the game because it is well done. It is a well done game. So, anyways, that's the 5 things I've been up to lately. Hope I didn't bore you too much, and I'm sure I will be back soon enough with 5 more. Toodles!